Okay, so we're going to start covering Chapter 10, Section 3 today. And in Chapter 10, Section 3, we're going to look at the right to vote. So our objectives are going to be who can vote in the U.S. elections and how is this right protected? What is the difference in primary elections and general elections? And then finally, how has the voting process changed over the years? So first of all, the right to vote. Now, we've covered a little bit of this before in some of the previous chapters, but all citizens over the age of 18 are eligible to vote. States cannot deny the right to vote based on race, color, or sex. And we can throw in their religion. The Voting Rights Act protects voters' rights, and the Voting Rights Act goes back to the early 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement. Now, people that are disqualified from voting are prison inmates, mentally incompetent persons, election law violators, and persons with no established residence. First of all, let me be a little more specific with some of this. Mentally incompetent persons. What we're talking about here are people that are not capable of being able to understand the election process. It doesn't mean that a person has to have an intellectual disability or anything like that. Some people, because maybe they've suffered a traumatic brain injury from an accident, maybe it was a disorder that they had from birth, something along those lines, and they're just not able to make good quantified decisions. They're not going to be able to vote. Obviously, a person that doesn't know how to read is not going to be able to vote. Doesn't mean that you're mentally incompetent. If you just had a person that for whatever reason they didn't go to school, they dropped out of school at a very young age, whatever the case may be, they're not going to be able to vote. And then a person with no established residence. So basically what we're talking about here is homeless people. You have to have an established residence in order to be able to vote. When you go to the polling place to vote, you're going to walk in the door and there's going to be people sitting at tables, and one table they'll help people the letters A through G, and another one might be H through M, and N through S, and T through Z. And so you walk up to the table, you give them your name, and the first thing they're going to do is they're going to find your name and they're going to see what your address is to make sure you're at the right place. But if you don't have an established address, then you're not going to be able to vote. Like, for example, you walk in and they say, okay, what's your established address? And you can't tell them, well, you know that Chinese restaurant down on First Street? Okay, back behind there, there's an alley. Now, if you take that alley about a block down from there, and then you hang a right into another alley, there's an old dumpster there, and not that dumpster, but right next to the dumpster, I got a nice prime little spot right there, and that's where I'm living. I'm hoping to add on here in another week or two. I got my eye on this nice big refrigerator box. I get my hands on that. I'm going to have a nice addition. Might put up a little den, maybe, maybe a little smoke room where I can go get a nice novel and sit down and put my feet up on my old milk crate and just cozy up with a new book. Unfortunately, that's not going to cut it for an established residence. Or you can't tell them, the overpass that goes over the interstate on 84th Street. Well, if you go right up there, up under the overpass, I've got a nice cozy little spot up there. That's my summer home, but I winter someplace else. It has to be a place that has an actual street address to it. So you have to have an address to live someplace. Okay, and then finally, you have to register prior to the election. Now, when are elections held? They're held on the Tuesday following the second Monday of, no, I'm sorry, that's not the second Monday, it's the first Monday, the Tuesday following the first Monday in November. So let's say that Tuesday's the first day of the month. You don't vote then because you haven't had a Monday yet. So after Monday, of course, is Tuesday, then you have to vote. So before you can go vote, you have to register to vote. When you register to vote, it's about as easy can be. You simply fill out a form. They're going to ask you for what political party you want to belong to, name, address, and really that's about it. In fact, we can go to the Pierce County Courthouse website and we should be able to go to the office of the clerk and county clerk. Well, that's not it. I thought it was the county clerk. It's not going to be the treasurer. But I believe it's with the county clerk. You should be able to register to vote. Voter registration information. There it is. So voter registration information, voting registration form, and you can see that it's pretty easy to fill out. Are you a citizen of the U.S.? Well, hopefully you're going to put yes. Are you 18 years of age? Will you be 18 years of age on or before the first Tuesday following the first Monday in November? Because that's when elections are. Then you simply put in your first name, middle initial, last name, date of birth, place of birth, driver's license number, and the last four digits of your social security number. Then, are you going to be a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, nonpartisan, or other? Fill that information out. There you go. Okay, easy peasy Japanesey. So, register to vote, that's all you have to do. Next, primary elections. Now, primary elections. I'm going to get this on here first. You have closed primary and then an open primary. In a closed primary, only party members can vote for each party's candidate. In an open primary, voters can vote for either party's candidate. But let's go back here to our voter registration. If you do not register as a Democrat or Republican, let's say you go other, maybe you want to be an independent, okay? That this is going to mean something. This is pretty important because if you sign up as an independent, when you go to vote in a primary election, you cannot vote. Because when you go to vote in a primary, you're choosing between who's going to represent the Democrats and who's going to represent the Republicans. Well, if you don't belong to the Democrats or Republicans, then there's no one for you to vote for. I know that doesn't sound very democratic, but that's how things are run. Now, in a closed primary, let's say that you are registered as a Democrat. When you walk in there, you give them your name, they look it up, yep, there's your name, you're in the right spot. When they hand you your ballot's only going to have the Democratic candidates on it. In an open primary state, when they hand you a ballot, it's going to have both Democrats and Republicans. Now, Nebraska is a closed primary state. So you're a Democrat, you only get a Democratic ballot. Now, next thing we need to talk about, primary elections. Okay? Every year, every election year, they're always going to have what are going to be called caucuses. And the first caucus to be held, and caucuses are nothing really more than political meetings. The first caucus that is held is in Iowa. So let's say that for the Democrats, okay, these are going to be our Democratic candidates. We're going to have Bo Pelini, and we're going to have Justin Bieber, and we're going to have Zac Efron, and who else should we have? We're going to have we got Bo Pelini, Justin Bieber, Zac Efron. We're going to have Prince, only we would call him the symbol. We're going to have John Cena. And we're going to have... Okay, so what's going to happen is in Iowa, let's say that in Iowa, Bo Pelini gets 26% of the vote. And Justin Bieber gets minus 4%. I don't know if that's possible to get a minus, but it's Justin Bieber, so anything's possible. Zac Efron is going to get 32% of the vote. Prince is going to get 4% of the vote. John Cena is going to get 25% of the vote. And Miley Cyrus is going to get negative 10% of the vote. Okay, so our top vote winners are Bo Pelini, Zac Efron, and John Cena. Then what's going to happen is we're going to go to New Hampshire. And so we're going to have the same candidates. And so in New Hampshire, Pelini's going to get 25% more. Justina Bieber is going to get 1% of the vote, which is actually an improvement from Iowa because New Hampshire's close to Canada and Justin Bieber's from Canada, so some crazy Canucks spilled across the border and a couple of them voted from him. Zac Efron is going to get 30% of the vote. Prince is going to get 8% of the vote. John Cena is going to get 40% of the vote. And Miley Cyrus is going to get minus 18% of the vote. So, one of the next ones after that is going to be South Carolina. And I'm going to have to end this because I'm about ready to run out of my 15 minutes. So we'll pick up with South Carolina on the next video clip.